What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Empty Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Fairbanks, and on my right we have my immediate right.
Oh yeah, John Joyner?
That sounds good to me. And on his right we've got
Sean Hawkins.
Awesome. So we're just going to be doing the podcast today, and if this is your first time listening to the podcast, it's pretty simple. We just get 3 or 4 people together who have artists, who have opinions on that type of thing, and it's by no means an expert cast or a how to do this or how to do that. We're really trying to emulate like a coffee shop conversation, or the conversations you would have with like showmates or castmates after a performance when you're backstage, something like that. So the way it works is we each bring a topic of discussion, we throw it out there, we just kind of give our opinion on it and just kind of throw it around until we're happy and we move on to the next topic. So it's pretty simple.
It's important to maintain really low expectations.
See, that's all that was just it's like you've probably listened to podcasts before.
And if we say something really stupid or silly, or if we get our styles of theater wrong, or like the history or where it came from, the period,
or if we ever talk about anything other than theater that we have absolutely no qualifications to talk about.
The only thing we're working with between the 3 of us is a 4-year BFA or a BA theater degree, kind of specifying. So, that's essentially it, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, casual, low expectations, or casual, whatever you prefer, whatever floats your boat.
Look at how far we're leaning back. Of course
we're leaning so
this
far
couldn't
back.
be more casual.
Oh,
I
man.
fold my leg like that. All right.
Look at
Now
that.
you rock it.
All right.
Alright, so first topic, we're going to start with my topic. I want to know what individuals or art pieces have inspired you to get to this point. And not just what can you always turn back to, this person, that film, that book, etc., that band. What are the different artists that kind of helped you form your creative perspective that you have now, or helps you, maybe it doesn't inform necessarily what you're doing now, but if you're ever in the dumps, it can kind of give you a lift.
Yeah. I was gonna say music and film, I think, tie together very well. I think all of us have musical influence as well as film and theater and whatnot. But for me personally, I think it's a lot of music. I think so much of the first half of my life was so musically involved that I think it couldn't help but influence my acting career 100%. I'm so thankful that was such a big part of my life. But if I could think of specifics, music-wise, I grew up on classic rock, went to some pop, country music.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think Rolling Stones is a big one for me that I was always... There was a period of Jonas Brothers that I went through when I was
junior
kind
in
of
high school.
a tween.
Yeah.
They always kind of go together, it's like
Rolling Stones, Jonas
Mick
Brothers.
Jagger, Joe Jonas.
And then film-wise, the 2 that come to my head, right off the top of my head, I'm sure there's many, many more, but Shawshank Redemption is just a film that I think is an incredible story, that I appreciate all the acting, all the different characters and levels of acting in it, and just the story, the through line of the story. And then the other film that sticks out that maybe is not as popular is The Judge with Robert Downey Jr. and Robert.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Not a ton of people have seen it. Some people have such a kind of a negative, or don't care for it as much. I just think when a story maybe affects you more personally, it resonates with you, obviously. And I think that for me, that's just one that.
So give us a log on what is the
Father and Son, and it's just the struggle between a father and son that just maybe just years of trying to make that relationship work, and there's a lot of levels between any family relationship, and I just think for me personally, father and son relationship is something that maybe, I don't know if I want to say struggled with, but it just really resonated. And watching it with my father and watching his reactions to that, it's very interesting. It's just, that's the power of...
Man, that's like a psychological exercise to go through films like that with that type of person
Yes.
in the room.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Anyway,
It's this is about us, but it's not about us because it's a movie.
Yes.
Man.
So how's that? Tell me about your relationship with your father,
oh boy,
Sean.
I don't know. I hope he doesn't know how to work a computer. So.
Oh, thank goodness.
I was always closer to my mother, and there's that tension of wanting to live up to your father's expectations, and you want to be. I was never the manly, played all the sports kid that he was.
Sure.
Not that he was overly manly, but just was very good at everything
Right.
he did, and I kind of had to work at everything I ever did. So it was always that. We had a great relationship. It was just there's the intricate.
It's like some contrast going on between the two of you. Yeah.
Love him to death, but I'm very close to my mom.
Yeah.
I'm Italian.
I love my mom. Fuck you, dad.
Two Italians, one.
Something. What are you? What is this?
English and I believe Scottish. Yeah, makes Braveheart really hard.
Michigan-ish, right? Yeah.
Man, I think that's really cool that you appreciate the Rolling Stones. I've always had this thing where like it's like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and I can never decide because I think they're like equal. I like them equally,
See,
Sure.
mine is always Beatles or Beach Boys. That's my argument, but I guess there doesn't need to be an argument about that. It's just
They can both be good for exactly what they are. I mean, the Beatles, if they didn't exist, there would not be popular music today. But
and God only knows
that's
where I'd be without you.
God only knows. And with that, they were copywritten and taken off the
Oh
air.
yeah, you gotta
All set
like
here.
change the tone of it
No, not
just to suggest what we're singing about the song, but not hitting it at all just right. So it'd be like,
We'll just put a little beat through that.
yeah,
10
just
seconds.
I'm so tone deaf. I think I think my rendition of the song was like,
You'll go on.
what's he singing over there? Is he drunk? What's in that mug?
What's going on there? Okay, so for me, something I always go back to is I think one of the big reasons I really wanted to get into acting was after I saw The Dark Knight in theater. Just like
Oh, wow.
going through Heath Ledger's performance, and I remember just being like on the edge of my seat the entire time I saw it, and then going to see it again and it being just as moving and being like, I had to tell like all my friends about it. I was like, God, it's this movie, it's insane. You've got to see this one. Like he does such a good job. And then there was like also like what happened to Heath Ledger and like in real life in contrast to his character, and that was all just like it felt so gripping and so real and tragic all at once. So that really going back to that movie can always kind of like give me a little bit of inspiration, just a kick to be like, yes, there is something like beautiful out there to be done in the realm of art. As far as music goes, I grew up on U2 like religiously, so any of their music, especially the Joshua Tree. I'm a big fan of Bono and Edge. I think Edge did a lot sonically with guitar that wasn't going on at the time, and I think Bono is one of the most passionate performers I've ever seen in any different art form. I've gotten to see them live before, and it was a really, really, really incredible experience. So yeah, just like that kind of stuff, I don't know.
I have a question. Is it The Edge? Is there an article in the title, or is it just Edge?
I think it is technically The Edge, but everyone just calls him Edge.
You think people call it? So that's like probably what he goes by.
Yeah. At
What's
this point,
his real name? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have a name. It's just Edge.
It's just always Edge, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just like, I don't know, I think it's sometimes that you have stuff from like your childhood and you can just like kind of go back to that, and like you've got like nostalgia going on with it, but also as you get older, like you're like, oh, I liked that back then, and it's also got like all these different like elements of structure working for it, and like with or without you meant a whole lot. Like it meant a very different thing to me back then than it does now, but I can still appreciate my point of view from back then, and I think it's just really interesting how your perspective on something can you can still be like, yes, I approve of this, I like this piece of art, but like the reason for it can totally shift as you just age.
Do you think that the change that comes about the further you get away from the source material, do you think that alters at all, I guess, like your perception of the work? Meaning, when you saw Star Wars for the first time, I'm just like imagining that it was like the craziest thing that you've ever seen because you were like 6, 7, 10, and like a boy, like a child, and getting taken to this world. It's so different than what you know. And is it almost like heroin? Like the first time that you try it, that I've heard that it's like the best and it'll never get better than that. And then each subsequent time, it's like you're looking at it, and then you take a picture of it, and then you're looking at the picture, and then you take a picture of that picture, and then the next time that you see it, it's like, are you getting further and further away?
Sure.
Or is it still? Do you feel like that can still be incorporated into the way that you see it, and that you can grow with it over time?
I don't know. I don't think it's a one for one, always this or always that. Because with The Dark Knight, every time I watch it, I'm trying to get back to that original movie theater feel, and I never quite get back.
Yeah.
Like I get glimpses of it, and that's what's so special.
Sure.
But like I don't know, and maybe you feel the way same with like Shawshank Redemption, where it's like you still like appreciate it, and it's like, oh, I remember this flavor and this taste and this one scene that is so like poignant to me for some reason. But it's never quite the same as that initial time you experienced it.
Sure.
However, with like Star Wars, number 4, A New Hope, I think I appreciate it more now than I did when I was a child, just because I know a lot more of like the significance of it, and I appreciate different things about just like where they were at and what they were working with special effects wise, and all like the kind of like nitty gritty details that I just learned from being a fan who is now like has access to the internet and can read like Wikipedia or purchase a book on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it just depends.
I just think it's interesting because it goes into, how much do you want to control art or how you. Oh,
simultaneous sip.
I guess I lost them both. They're out.
I'm gonna take a long draft of this. I don't know what to say though. What's going on?
No, I think it's something we all try to do with music and any type of art in general. Is you want to control the experience, which I think takes away from the experience. And the example when you brought up Shawshank, like I can think of the first time in the scene that I maybe teared up for, or was so emotionally connected to, and then the next time watching it and saying, "Gosh, I want to experience that same feeling at the same moment."
Right.
Yeah.
So I push, and
then you get there and you're artistically constipated.
I think you do artistically constipated. I think you do grow with the. I think you're right. I think it's time for time basis type thing, but I think you grow with the material, and I think the life that you kind of experience does echo how you experience it at that time in your life. I don't know. I think now, like I watched Shawshank just the other day in a totally different, more, I don't know if I want to say mature, but different way of feeling it at a different time in the film. And it was, it was because I was so far removed from it, I didn't have to push that feeling anymore. So it just came when it came.
I think your people's capacity for empathy changes as they age in a unique way. Because the more you've experienced and the more actual pain and hardship you've seen firsthand, either to yourself or to someone else, when you see that reflected in art, I think that's when it kind of, you realize that you've had a change of thinking and you're like, oh, this used to be blue to me and now it's purple. And it's still a color, it's still on the rainbow, like it's still there, it's the same thing that I liked. But I think there's something to just perspective slightly changing and being able to put yourself even further in someone's shoes, because I think we all try to do that whenever you consume, a song, a movie, a book, what have you. But once there's just something about having some firsthand experience sometimes, or something that's close to firsthand, that then will enrich something, at least for me, that I thought I was already at like 100% on. And I think it's also interesting how you were talking about something you were saying about time. About who? What? You? Sean, sorry. About the time passing between watching Shawshank then and watching it now. I kind of go through spaces sometimes with stuff that I really like, where I'll like, listen to it for a while, like YouTube. I'll listen to all their stuff for a while, and I'm like, okay, I'm good, and I'll put it down for like 8 months, and then you go back to it, and it's like kind of the same thing. You just got a totally different feel to it.
I was going to say too about, I think what's so, I couldn't think of Dark Knight on the at that moment, but it is such an incredible film and performance by Heath. But I think what's so cool about that performance is just how surprising it really is. When I watch it, I cannot believe how surprised I am at his reactions and how he performs and how he thinks. And obviously a script only gives so much of that. You know what I mean? It's there, but it's like, obviously you've seen how many different Jokers in your time and how different that performance is. And I think it's just so real and so visceral, but I think the surprise of it is so part.
Yeah, I mean the proof is in the pudding. I mean all it took was 3 Halloweens after the movie came out to see how many crappy Joker impersonations
Oh yeah.
that you could find from everyone. It's just like, man, this is just proof that this guy was on a whole nother plane, because even with the voice in it, you never get that, like, the creepiness of like seeing his face in IMAX, just tongue darting across the lips. And
But there's something as exaggerated as it is. There's something so we know, in a way we each know a guy or a collection of people that fit that. You know what I mean? Like you've come across people that give you the same feeling that Heath gives you in the film.
Mhm.
There's something so real about it versus being a caricature of what
Right.
he's.
There's
He
just like a
doesn't-
silly clown.
He doesn't
yeah.
seem like a monster. He seems like a man with paint on his face. But I think everyone else plays him as a monster. But he really does seem like a man, like a real person.
Yeah.
He's just also off his rocker.
Heath is actually 10% Shih Tzu, so he.
Part man, part shit.
Bless you. What?
Shih Tzu. I meant to say.
So Michael, what about you? What are some stuff that some things
Oh,
that got you going?
Man, I mean, The Dark Knight's like that's such a better answer to. I don't even count it. Like, the movie that made me want to get into acting was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
That one scene in the Ministry of Magic.
Yeah.
We have to talk about it. There's whatever. Daniel Radcliffe was like acting to a camera, whatever. There's no whatever. But I don't know. I mean, the artists that probably that I'm inspired by the most, I would say, writers. I think that's the thing that gets me the most excited about a particular project, or because to me, like, that it's that's where you begin with a story, and everything else that comes as a result is a really cool thing to have happen when you have directorial concepts or acting and choices that you can make, or set design or dressing, but like the ability to build a world using only text, and then having people come in and say, oh, well, this is how I envision Middle Earth, or this is what I think Hogwarts looks like, or
Sure.
this is, anything. So I think like a couple of writers that I really admire, first and foremost, Anis Mogani is probably at the top of the list. He is a African-American Iranian poet who does a lot of like spoken word performance pieces, and he's just a fantastic writer. He's written I think at least like 4 or 5, 6 different books, and he does a lot of touring and performing. He did like a lot of slam poetry back when like that was more of like a thing with like Mos Def and people being kind of aware of that. But he just writes like really. He's from the South. He's from New Orleans. Grew up with everything that I could relate to as a young child. Magnolia trees and popsicles, and running barefoot through the mud. Just like stuff, music and things that are like very, very relatable to. And he's just got a really, really unique voice. So that's something that's always, I think, I never would consider myself to be a writer, but once I started to write more frequently, especially in college and after, I could definitely see the bloodlines and the fingerprints of his work kind of all over the stuff that I was writing. So much so that it almost, like, reading stuff that when I was writing initially, it was like, oh, that is like, I ripped that off of him. Not like word for word, but there's like, stylistically, it's like, oh crap, that's like exactly, anybody who's a fan would be like, oh, it's Anis Mogani, and it's just you. So I think that's probably one.
When did you start reading that? Like, how long has it been something you've been reading?
Oh, probably for the last 4 or 5 years. I think it started in college, like when I was young, like freshman, sophomore year. So about 5 years.
Did you find it from a class, or how'd you find it?
I don't remember actually. I think it was. Man, I want to say the first poem that I ever heard of his was probably For Those Who Are Still Afraid to Ride on Airplanes, which is. It must have been a video. I think it was because I remember performing some spoken word pieces in acting classes in college because I still audition with them today, and it seems like casting directors hate it, or any director just like cannot fucking stand when somebody comes in and they're like, I'm gonna perform a poem. I don't know what it is. There's like some sort of stereotype about like, you know, the way that it sounds, or like, you know, but in terms of like scoring it, it seems like it's just as heightened language as like something for Shakespeare, save like iambic pentameter, but there is like very clear rhythm and cadence and like beats to it. I think that poetry, especially spoken word poetry, does in a very, very short amount of time what a whole play would do for you over the course of an hour and a half. So I think it makes it, for me, I like auditioning with it because it's like, oh, you want a 2-minute monologue? Well, perfect, it's a 2-minute poem. There's no need to cut it. You don't have to go in and say, well, I like this and I want it to feel like that and I just need that. It just doesn't work. So, but yeah, I think I found it through Audition Portfolio.
I wonder if nice.
Yeah.
Cool. I wonder if the issue with it would be, because it is encapsulating so much of a story, that it's hard to say in like first person, like you're talking to someone. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's what they don't like. I don't know.
I would have to ask them all, but it seems like whenever I perform, whenever I've done spoken word pieces, everyone's just like politely smiles, and then I'm like, I shit the shits on that one.
I'll let myself out.
I've done it before for like grad school auditions, and I think
nice.
No, it's not nice because I'm still sitting here talking to you idiots instead of learning how to be a better artist.
Well, it just makes me ask. I want to ask a question about these different type of mediums, but I can't think of what question I want to ask. But maybe how do you determine which medium is most effective? Like, you know, we have all these different mediums: poetry and film and theater, and painting and music and
dance,
and all kinds of. It's just interesting to see at which points and which areas some are more effective and
what's the
even which people.
Medium?
Well, yeah, it has to be like learning style, right? Wouldn't you think? Like some people are a visual learner, some people are, you know, like it just depends on like what speaks to you. Is it something that you read? Is it something that you see? Is it something that you hear? You know, like it might have to do more with that than like saying like, nope, it's decided, this is the best one for everyone, and this is what we're going with.
Right.
Cancel all the others. I think that's kind of what makes it so special, is like, you can go see, you know, The Nutcracker, and some people take away from it that the music, and other people the dance, and other people like, oh, those costumes were so interesting, and that made me think of this. So I don't know, I don't want to paint with a broad brush and be like, well, they're all equally important, but I mean, it's got to just depend on the individual, don't you think?
I would disagree with that. I would say, here it is, I'm coming in hot. I'm going to say text or maybe images. So if you go back, like, what were some of the first things that people were doing to communicate? I would say, like, images, if that's, you know.
Okay, right.
Yeah, like, I think, sure, like, that definitely has merit and could hold true. I think for me, what I would imagine, not like me personally, and so it's right for everyone else, but like, I'll tell you this. So when you read The Hobbit for the first time, and I'm not talking about like the film.
Should I have read that before this?
Yeah. Did you not get the summer reading list for this? Yeah. No, but like when you read The Hobbit for the first time, before you ever saw The Lord of the Rings, it was incredible. I mean, like reading, like you get everything, like it's almost like you can hear the music before somebody's like telling you, because I think that's one thing about film.
It's beautiful. Keep going.
Is that film is lovely because it's somebody's perspective. It is like exactly the way that they want a scene to go or a story to be told or anything. Like, they're telling you that the only thing that exists in film is what's on the screen. So when you see something like a Wes Anderson film, like, that's it. Like there is nothing outside of what it is that's on the screen, and it's great because everything is so detailed, it's meticulous, it's stylized, it's told in a certain way. There's, you know, elements to it that are distinctly like a Wes Anderson film. But I think that like film in that sense, and I think music to some degree too, is limiting in that sense because there is only just what it is that you have. And I know that text is the same way. You're not going to change the words of The Hobbit to something else. I mean, maybe you could rearrange it to something else that was different, but, you know, but that it leaves so, it is the barest bones in terms of like, it's the least amount of something that's used that can give you, in my opinion, the most out of it. Because you can read a book, or you can read a poem, or even like lyrics or something, and then all of that is left up to you to kind of like suss out for yourself. So that, and I would say that paintings are the same way too, like images that, you know, even more so it is like a, you know, there's, I would say, more of a perspective or a narrative from the way that it's told. But just in terms of like what you can relate to, like primally, that's, so I would say that text is like the most.
I agree with that just
important.
because I think everything you just said was really beautiful, because I think it's all about we as the audience want to create the experience, and I think we just as human beings want to create, and that's why. Also, I was going to say too, the only thing I could think to compare that to film is that I think my favorite films to watch are sometimes the simplest of actors or acting, because the more simple the acting, like someone like, oh God, I already forgot his name. This is going to be horrible for
Oh shoot.
Anthony
Hopkins.
Hopkins, my God.
That's okay.
Don't die before I can work with you. Someone like Anthony Hopkins,
You better call him
who
sir.
doesn't do, but he knows it all. You know it's all there. But
Right.
somebody who is so freaking simple, you create, and he said it himself before in an interview. But you create the experience
Right.
because he's not doing the work for you. You're doing the work. That's what makes it visceral for you, because you're putting three people could watch Anthony's performance and get totally something different out of it, but have the visceral experience
Right.
because they're able to put so much into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's
It's
why
just a
text,
baseline.
it's just the baseline. And text is the simplest form of that, because it's words on paper. It's all, your gears are just grinding. There's no visual, there's no music, there's no color, there's nothing to it.
But it has all of that, like good writing has all of that within it.
Yes.
To where you can hear the music, you can see the colors, you can feel what it is, you know. So Anis Mogani is a big one. I like songwriters like Bob Dylan or Sleeping at Last for that same reason, because they are like just writers, musicians, I feel like. And in terms of like film, if I could pick an example, Garden State's probably like the top of my list in terms of that, because I think it's just, and again, like, you know, it's funny that to bring it up now, but as I was hearing you talk about, you know, listening to like YouTube and then coming back to it 8 months later, and you know, or knowing so much about Star Wars and like how it was made, and you know the models and all this, that your perception of the work almost informs the reception of it, and if the more you know, the more that you care about it, so the more that it pays off in the end.
I hate that though.
Really, but
I think that's I've always hated that. I'm guilty of it, but I think that is kind of I don't know. I haven't made up my mind on whether I think that's authentic appreciation or not. I think, for example, like I think the Beatles are incredible, but I think a lot of Beatles T-shirts have been sold over people being like the Beatles. You know what I mean? Without like actually like listening to it.
Oh well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
without a doubt.
I believe you should be such a big Beatles fan because like you've gotten into it. I think other people just buy the T-shirt in a way that's like the Beatles are cool. You know what I mean? Because they're like historical and they're
Sure, I mean,
the most important band ever, probably. And all like all that
Right.
jazz. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of like a side point. We don't
No,
need,
no,
we don't
no,
need to
yeah,
go down that
yeah.
rabbit hole.
We'll-
But do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where
we'll
like
punch
it can be.
posers later. Yeah, just-
Well, I don't mean like.
Name 3 Beatles albums, you sick son of a bitch. When did they break up? So Garden State was a cool, like the story behind it and how it got made and like all of that, like it's very neat. But like the writing for what it is just like, man, that's a really really cool story that you're telling. It's in a different way. It's for me it's like the perfect movie. I think it's perfectly written, perfectly acted, perfectly directed.
It's always. I haven't seen it. I would speak to it once I've seen it. I haven't seen it.
Shoot.
I want it.
Say something about it.
I want to see it.
Okay.
Yeah. I just
I'm
We'll
not
pop
gonna
that
lie, I haven't seen it either, so I feel like
Really?
this might be an opportunity for us.
Man,
Yeah.
it's a really, I mean,
I've
look,
heard great things.
for
So
what
bad.
it's in the same way of like 500 Days of Summer. It's like for what it is it's independent rom-com, 2 people falling in love, and you're just like, dang, I wish that real life was like that.
It's funny. Just
It's not, but that's okay.
doing this one topic has already made me think of like 3 other topics.
Yeah.
I
I
changed
like-
mine.
It's like, oh,
Changed
okay,
You changed it just like that?
all right.
Hell yeah.
Should I go right into it?
Yeah, it's a good segue.
Well, we
Hit
kinda-
it, Sean.
Okay, Sean Hawkins here.
John Hawkins,
Sean-
goddamn to meet you.
This goes off what we talked about.
Actually, wait, time out. Can we go back to something?
Cut, yeah.
So
Is
this
this recording?
caveman analogy we were talking.
I'm gonna
about.
forget my topic.
This caveman analogy. I wanted to clarify something. We were talking about how written word was the first form of communication. Do we think that these cavemen, before trying to communicate something to someone by going like, they were like, hold on, and then go over to the wall?
Now listen, I'm not smart enough. I don't know. I did not study anthropology. I have no idea. I'm sure somebody out there is like, wow, actually, in the period, actually communication that was, I don't know, whatever. I'm just going off of what I learned in American history in 8th grade. That was the last time I covered it. And I seem to remember a chapter.
Texas is the best.
Yeah, right. I remember a chapter when they were talking about like communication and like cave drawings and written languages were like the 2 things that people were like very close and you can. Again, I'm about to speak so far out of my expertise. I'm like,
I don't want to like get into
fucking
this.
idea.
I just thought that was funny, and I was like, I need to bring that up later. And then we were about to leave.
oh, if you got a riff, you got a riff.
Okay, sometimes you got a riff.
Yeah, what's that topic that you talking about?
And okay, on to the next topic.
So it had to do with what we were talking about, and let me see if I can find a good way to phrase it. But basically, how do you recognize the most beautiful things that you've recognized in your life? Like, and I'll give you my example so that it kind of, you can tell me if you have something, a similar experience.
Should we smoke weed before or after that?
Oh.
What do you think?
I'm not gonna turn down some guns.
My
No,
mom's
so-
watching this.
And we lost the Christian right. Anyway, continue.
Okay, so I have I was talking about this just the other night, but I have this box that I can put in the most beautiful moments of my life, whether that's what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've felt, what I've touched, in any sense. And it
Is
comes
this a
down
literal
to-
box or is it metaphorical?
No, metaphorical.
Okay.
It should have been literal if I had thought at a younger age to do it. It would have
Okay.
been beautiful to read, because I can't remember all of them, obviously. But I get this feeling, and for me it's so simple because it literally comes at all the most beautiful moments of all these
Right.
things. But it literally is just a small tingle down the center of my neck. And I swear to God, I get it every time I have one of those experiences. Whether it's touch, sight, smell, that type of thing, I'll get that feeling, and it just reminds, it's a unexplainable thing, but when I get it, it feels like the same experience every time. Does that make sense? It feels like better than any, excuse my French, any sexual experience I've ever had. It's always like that's the highest point of my life
Of like
personally.
ecstasy, yeah.
Because
Of like pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like pure joy.
Yeah.
Right?
I wish we had somebody who actually did like very, very heavy drugs, because I remember working at a bar where there were a lot of people who would experiment and do all sorts of things. That I think the feeling that you're describing, again,
I'd be so interested.
about to go so far out of my
Did
responsibilities.
we establish we aren't experts?
Yeah, so
We are friends.
it's I believe it's what, like, is it DHT? The drug that it's like there's like a certain thing of chemicals that are released into your brain when you're either dreaming or dying.
Wow.
And it's like the strongest. So it can either be, I think it can be taken either like synthetically or organically. So you can find it out in nature. Like there's like certain just like things that secrete whatever this is, and you take that, and then it's like it's that drug that if you've ever heard of people taking it and it's like an out of body experience. They're like talking with like sentient beings around a fire. Like it's like it's weird stuff. And I wonder if that has anything to do with like, you know,
It's most
like your brain just somehow
that
gives you
your
a
brain
little
is,
dap of that, just like
it's most certainly
Yeah.
a chemical.
because it's
flush.
not, yeah.
It's nothing, it is what it is, but it is interesting to me to know that that is released or felt at all, in all those feelings.
Of just like the best, yeah.
The best. So, I don't know, I
Can
guess
you give me an example of, not like specifically what the moment was, but like, was it just a...
I can give you a couple specifics. It's riding in a car and having a song maybe that you've heard 100,000 times affect you in just the right way at the right moment,
yeah.
the right sunset,
Yeah.
the right tree,
The right
and boom, all of a
cigarette
sudden
behind,
it's
yeah.
the tingle. Or it's being with someone that you really love, not even sexually, but just in having a moment where you look so deeply into their eyes that you get that tingle. Or it's watching a film. I think it happened maybe at one point, in one of the times I've watched a movie like Shawshank,
Right.
but just
Yeah.
having that feeling. And I'm sure everybody has. What my question is how do you recognize maybe the highest
Yeah,
beauties or the highest feelings in your life? How do you?
I get like a feeling of, I think it's sort of like the more of like when something takes your breath away type of thing. Like I like to describe things that I feel that way about as like, sometimes things are so good, like they feel almost not like, it almost feels stupid. Like that's, how can that be like that? That's like,
Oh, like wonder.
yeah, it's just like, you're just like, oh, how was that so good? How was that performance in that movie so amazing? How was that song in that perfect setting so incredible and poignant, and the serendipity of having heard it before, but then it comes in now, and so I think I get like, it's not like it's literally out of body, but I feel like I'm very present with whatever it is that I'm viewing, whatever the beautiful object is, but I'm also kind of like whoop out, and it's like, whoa, it's happening, whatever that it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Well,
weird.
And I want to hear.
Well,
The
'cause
only
you
thing I'm
feel
going to
it
note
so-
on that is
You don't, yeah, sorry.
no. I just the thing that I want to note on that is the present thing, and I think that maybe is the root of it. Is it's the closest you come to the present. It's the realization of the present. I think when you fully, maybe it can happen in any given situation, but it's literally just saying, this is exactly what's happening right now, and I finally can appreciate this exact moment. And you don't do, I mean, you try to do that throughout a day
Right.
when you
Right.
meditate or whatever, but I feel like those are the true moments of like, this is exactly what it should have been, is, and forever will be, and it's right there.
Oh, it just sounds like mindfulness. I mean,
Yeah,
to me,
maybe
like
that's-
it's just,
yeah,
it sounds
absolutely.
like, in what you were hitting on, just being aware of, what it is, who you are, your relationship to it, how it applies to a grander sense, context, whether it's with someone else or shared with a group of people or witnessed or, enjoyed any of that. For me, I think it, I didn't know exactly how I felt about this until you asked the question, so it's really interesting. But for me, I think it's change. I think, and I can only think of specific examples, and I don't know if it's necessarily worth sharing, but it's like a very, this is safe. This will cause no emotional damage. No, like, I remember falling in love with somebody, and the moment that I like felt it physically, and like it like dropped like from like the head, like, you know, not to like, you know,
Right, once it was in you.
but like her face changed, like the qualities physically were the same, but it was and I remember it vivid, like looking at something and being like, this is like a cup holding water, and then like realizing like, yeah, this is, but like, oh, it's life, like that's what it is, and then like hitting it and being like, oh crap, like that, like that's nuts to me that you were there, I was here, we were both together, you know, nothing, I mean, it was so like nothing around, you know, what it was incredible or amazing. It's not like, you know, we were, you know, on a mountaintop and like looking down at the world and like, oh, this is crazy, or something that happened, or like something that was good. It was just like I was looking at her, and then something with, I don't know, with the light or whatever, but like her face changed, and I could not look at her differently from that point on. And it was in that the change was, I think, what that was for me.
I don't know.
Yeah,
No, that's really
incredible
cool to hear.
I've had that before. I don't think I was like I was there like you were, like watching the image actually change, but not even in a romantic sense before, but there are people that you know, and then when those people become like a friend that you trust, like they become a different person.
Yeah.
Especially like, and even visually. I'd never thought of that before. How
It is really
you literally, like, people say, oh, I look at them differently now. It's like you actually do quite honestly see them in a whole new way.
Yeah. That's
which
one
is
of my
fascinating.
Yeah, that's my favorite. One of my favorite literary, not really a prompt, but like the question, "What have you become? What has become of you? You were this, and stuff happened, and change occurs, and then you were quite literally somebody else. You were everything that you were. You always will be. You know, you still are, but you've changed into something else. And is it better? Is it worse? Is it tragic? Is it, you know, uplifting? Is it joyous? Is it triumphant? Or is it average or mediocre or mundane? Or is it disappointing? Is it disgusting? Is it gross? I mean, any of it. I mean, it's just like such an interesting, I think, question that just packs a whole lot of stuff into it. Like, then you can get perspectives in it. Like, are you proud of that person that you've become, or are you ashamed? Is it approved by many, or is it despised by? Like, I don't know. Just that's weird.
That got deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, it was either that or environment, art. Tie them together.
How does it work?
How does it
work?
No, I
Very
dig
cool
that.
here.
I dig that.
Yeah, that was a nice little topic. I'm glad we went down it.
Man.
Down that road.
So Michael, you wanna close this out here?
Hit the road.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we kind of talked about it. It was the source material, and I guess it was just something that I've been kicking around about relevance and whether or not something is more or less relevant depending on how much time or how many others that have come before it into like the original source material. So the example being, I think, two like pretty strong ones are maybe something like Our Town, or like Death of a Salesman, or like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, like plays that are produced a lot since they've been written. Is it really worth opening up and doing something again, even if you're doing it under the guise of like bringing something new to the play, or you're trying to highlight something that's different, or you want to show like the American dream in a different way than it's been done from the 10,000 other times that show's been produced. Or I think Shakespeare is, again, like, it's such an easy example, but like, is there still something that can be taken from that, or is it something like classical music to where it's like to lose the classical music audience here. But is it something that, like, yeah, it's a part of it, it's history, it's something that happened, it got us to, you know, other forms, but it's not, like, I can't even say this out loud without, like, sounding shitty, but, like, it's still important and it's still something that holds merit. It's still, like, very, very impressive, but it's not, like, you're not seeing, you know, hundreds of thousands of people being like, Bach, yes, like, Mozart, like, yes, this is, like, I'm still on it, and, like, I'm sure that they would if, you know, if anybody would listen, you know, and have that, you know, sort of, like, relationship with it, but it's just, you know, like, people aren't picking up cellos and learning how to play, you know, or they're not picking up, you know, classical guitars, it's electric guitars and like that, or acoustic guitars, and that's cool too. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Should work continue to be done, even if it's, you know, a new take or a new perspective, or should, if you want to, you know, talk about something that's going on today that's a little bit more relevant, should you just go and write your own piece and try to make something that is specifically tailored to this moment?
I would say yes, the work should continue. I don't think we should lose our Tennessee Williams, our Arthur Millers, or our Shakespeares. However, I think if you want to say something that is about an issue that's going on today, say you want to talk about, like, what's going on in Syria right now, if you want to touch on that, I think you'd be better off writing something specific to that current topic than taking whatever Shakespeare play you would and trying to redo it or costume it or set it in a time period so that you get the idea that it's somehow speaking to what's happening with, like, refugees. And I also think you need to get to a point where I think, you know, we were talking to a little bit of, sometimes there's frustration with seeing, like, these same plays mounted over and over again, especially in theater, because regional theaters are just trying to get people to buy tickets. I think in an ideal world you would have more of a balance between new works that are saying something different and have a different voice. And people are like, I want to go see that, just like I want to go see this indie band that no one else knows, because it's new and it speaks to me and stuff I know that's going on. And it doesn't matter that they're not the Rolling Stones. It seems like in theater, we get a lot of Rolling Stones concerts, which is great, and the Rolling Stones are incredible for what they are, but they're still just what they are.
As good as
you know,
the
no,
Beatles. Oh, yeah.
no, they still are, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
Van Gogh is still Van Gogh, but he's not going to be something else. You know, you're stuck in being what you are. And I think theater is sometimes can get a little stuck in what it is, and then whenever they feel that, instead of turning to new content, they turn to how do we spin old content, because we'll still get the people to come in and pay,
Right.
and then we'll maybe get some buzz around town to get the young kids to come in.
Yeah, I think the style continues to change, you know, and that's what they try to do with these old works. But I think the subject matter always resonates. I think that's what's beautiful about timeless, or what we call timeless works, is that you could take a play. Well, Shakespeare is a perfect example. I just went to see Shakespeare in the Park here at Griffith a month ago or so. But it's like you take a work like that, and somehow it resonates with the political climate of today. And I mean, how do you throw something away that does that type of thing for you? So I don't know. I
don't think you were saying throw it away.
No.
I was suggesting throw it away, because I don't know.
I love classical
that
music.
stuff. Just like, no, I mean, and like.
I know
you have to have an appreciation and a knowledge of, like, where it is that your art is coming from and what influenced it, and it is important to draw the lines and to say, okay, well, this led to that, and then that led to that, and then that led to that. I'm just thinking, like, I don't know, in 400 years, like, who, and again, I am also woefully ignorant when it comes to, like, very, very uber contemporary, like, extremely modern works, like stuff that's been written within, like, the last 2 or 3 years, or, like, decade even. But I don't know, like, what are we going to be doing? What are actors or directors or like, what are we still going to be focused on 400 years from now? Is it still going to be Shakespeare? Or is somebody else going to come along and be Shakespeare and write some really fucking awesome plays about everything that's going on right now in the world?
Right.
And then because those truths, those like absolute truths are never going to change, and then you're always going to have things that, you know, induce conflict or drama or resolution or something.
Well, I think in a way what you're bringing up is actually seeing that you're just wanting to take it to step 3. Because I imagine in maybe 100 years ago, you saw even more Shakespeare, because that was really like probably what people more of saw as like the ticker of what really good theater is. I'm sure you had audiences that went and saw more random theater because it was more popular 100 years ago than it is now. But now, we've gone through the modern theater era, and we've picked out our playwrights like our Ibsens and our Tennessee Williams, and they are now, by nature of us talking about them and being in all these regional theaters and being performed, globally, these plays, they have kind of taken a little bit of the place of Shakespeare. Now, Shakespeare is still always going to be Shakespeare because that's history, that's who he was, but he's taken some of that, like, when you're talking about, like, the slot of, like, what are we doing presently?
Yeah.
That's been sort of taken away. I think right now what's just unclear is, like, what is the next slot?
I think theater might have to find, like, how we do some of the, like, Bogger Cats play that we had done, but finding different ways to not only use the material, but maybe find a way to write the material in a new way that I don't know, I can't even wrap my head around it because I don't know what it would become.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the difference between like writing, like, what if you wrote a play that occurred over like a week rather than like an hour and a half?
Absolutely.
Or what if you had a play with, I mean, like, removing the things that have typically been defined as like a given of the art form.
Right, I think it's
Because I think it's the reason why, like you have something like jazz, like, yeah, you have all of these different types of musical instruments that are coming out, and then, you've got people who are learning how to play them, and they're doing it really, really well, and then they're changing the structure of the form of how that music is then played, and then boom, you have an entirely different, a new form of music. So when you take away things like a proscenium stage, or when you take away things like gender, or you bend it somehow in casting, or if you change where the audience is in their relation to the work, I mean, all that stuff. And there are people who are out there who are doing it, and they're doing it super well, and the reason why is because people are like, oh, that's like a new thing. And that, see, for me anyways, like, that is like the future of theater, is like making it in a new way that's different, that's tying into obviously like the givens of the art form of what people come to expect. It's not like it's not like you're gonna have a play where like an actor kills himself at the end, and that actor actually really Birdman kills himself, and then it's like, well, that was it, it's over, like that was like that it's fake, and that it's not real, but there's still all that stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing of like, we consider Hemingway, and we also like we would consider Farewell to Arms and Beowulf both books, but they read completely differently. So it's the same way where I think theater can feel like it's stuck in people still trying to write Beowulf, and we need to figure out what it is that it's going to be written like next. And it doesn't mean it's not theater. It's just structurally, there's a structural difference there somehow, and I think we're reaching for whatever that next ladder rung is, and it's still slightly undefined.
I think it's interesting too how I'm sure at the time, I think it's the same with music too. You don't know something is great and new necessarily. I mean, it's new, but maybe you don't know it's going to be one of the greats that's going to be performed in 400 years because there's just no way of knowing that.
Right.
So I think we're at a really interesting time, or maybe we're on the cusp of a totally new age type of theater experience, which I think we are, because I think you're starting to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Theater has had to adapt and change, and same with film. I think we're at a really interesting time where virtual reality and the that type of experience. I think
people aren't going to see movies anymore.
Yeah, you're not going to the theater. So in 20 years or 10, probably 5 years, the the change of these mediums and how you see these experiences, I think, are going to be so interesting. And I feel like they're changing quicker than they used to change too. All of it is changing quicker.
So many topics.
I need to read a book. I need to read like a real history book and learn some stuff. I'm so woefully ignorant when it comes to this.
Well,
got
that is the point, right? It's not a how-to.
I'm such an idiot.
Well, if you guys didn't know, this has been the Empty Theater Podcast.
My name's Poop.
That's Sniffles, and I'm Craig Fairbanks. Until next time. Catch you guys later.
Sniffles, wow.
I
I'm Craig Fairbanks.
I'm Han Shockins.
You're
Star Wars. The guy you never saw in Star Wars.
Steve Bashakis. That's who I am. Guys, that was 57 minutes.
I'm Connie Jack.
I'm not going to lie, I was really nervous that the